in my army green shirt again. And by the way, guys, uh, this is not an actual RV shirt. It's just a cotton wick shirt that I use when I work out because they're comfortable and it stops the sweat. But when I wear them with my little hoochie shorts here, people people assume that I'm wearing a army PT outfit. But our PT shirts aren't green, and our BDU shirts weren't green either. They were brown actually. The new ones for the new army uniforms, I think their undershirts are green or tan, I think. So maybe that's the confusion. But when I was still in, we had BDUs, not the new what they call them, camo something uniforms, whatever. ACUs, they call theirs instead ACUs instead of BDUs, Army combat uniform. But in any way, in any case, I am back, and this is gonna be a spicy topic. This is gonna be a spicy meatball. Um, I'm just gonna say it. The topic is tethers need to stop pretending to be black people to get elected. And you see the topic, and you probably gonna see the picture, so we could get right into it. And I know some people, I get a lot of people who are non-black, who watch, and they're like, I don't know about chiming in on this topic. You can chime in, but just know that you may not understand the nuances that I'm going over. But I will explain them. Uh, the two people pictured, the two people in that picture are tethers. So, what are tethers? Tethers are people of African origin from either the African continent or the Caribbean or Latin America who, come to the States for better opportunities and take advantage of, the economic opportunities here in America, as well as the privilege, the hard-won rights that foundational Black Americans have gained through civil rights struggle and other means, but come here and disparage those very same Black people for for supposedly not having the same amounts of success that they had in coming to America, which is ironic because most of the places they come from are shitholes. So, and they usually, when they come into politics, actually support policies that hurt Black Americans or openly are hostile to certain policies in place. Well, not in place, but either in place or that we want to put in place that would help the Black community, whether that be cash reparations or a Black anti anti-Black racist crime hate bill or um, other sorts of initiatives, whatever they may be. We don't need to argue those here. But yeah, Obama's a tether. Harris is a tether. Neither one of them were Black. Obama's mother was white. His father was a Kenyan immigrant who then went back to Africa. Obama lived with his mother in Hawaii, where there's no Black people unless you're stationed in the military. There's no like actual Black people. There might be some other mixed people or tethers like Obama in Hawaii, but there's very few Black people. When Obama was living was actually an actual like Black person living there. Would have been The Rock's father, um, but not very many. and he's never had any contact with the black community because there was no black community in Hawaii. And I challenge someone living in Hawaii or who used to live in Hawaii to tell me otherwise, that there's a thriving black community in Hawaii. And I'm not talking about on the military installation. I'm talking about civilians living there who aren't from the Caribbean, aren't some people from Guam who simply look black, and or aren't black Latinos. Again, doesn't count. Harris, same thing. Mother was East Indian, cool. Father was Jamaican. And again, you can ask Caribbean people themselves. Not all Caribbean people identify as black. Her father was Jamaican. He had African ancestry, but he also had he also had white and um, Indian ancestry as well. Nothing wrong with that, but again, he wasn't a black Jamaican. And if he was a black Jamaican, that still doesn't make him part of foundational black Americans or ADOS. So, but yet these two people get into office and have not done shit for black people, but then want to call themselves black to get support from the black community, to get votes, to get elected, but won't do anything for those people for those votes. Amani says, "Hey, I'm here, but you have to go." But I have to go because of sports. Bye. Have a good evening. Bye, Amani. She's in and out, folks. Make sure to give me a like, Amani, please. Thank you. Wednesday night. So let me get to the comments, and then I can get back into my tirade if I have to. But I think the comments will keep me occupied. Hopefully. Wednesday night says, "What are your thoughts on Dr. Umar Johnson's work?" Well, here's my question: what work has he actually done? He's just a social media. He's just a blowhard on social media. He's not done anything other than go on podcast after podcast talking shit. Like I don't rock with these pro blackity black people. They're selling bullshit. Um, the pro black movement has been around since the '60s, and they have done nothing. And before people get upset, I want you to realize the pro black movement and the civil rights movement were not the same thing. The civil rights era in the '60s with people like Martin Luther King Jr., Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and many others in that time, they were separate from the pro black movement that started in that era too, which King and others thought was actually would actually uh, be antithetical to the civil rights movement and the stuff that they tried to achieve. And they were right. King was right. So once the civil rights movement had kind of stilted after the Civil Rights Act was passed in '64 and became law in '65 under President Lyndon Johnson, you saw more people getting militarized, especially after the Watts riots and after the assassination of Dr. King. I mean, there was a bunch of stuff. There was the assassination of JFK, then of Malcolm X, then Dr. King, then RFK Sr., not to mention Medgar Evers. And then, you had a blossoming of the pro black movement, and it was spurred on even more with the Black Panthers. And then they get like people like Fred Hampton being assassinated and all this other sort of stuff. But there's never been any fruits that came out of the Black Power movement other than just to give young Black children a sense of positive self identity. Other than that, there's nothing's really come out of it. So Umar Johnson being part of that whole pro black movement, I think he's full of shit. He's done nothing. He actually had a lot of black people who used to support him like 11, 12 years ago. And then they stopped supporting him because he ripped a lot of people off, claiming he was going to build a school in Philadelphia for black children, like a, a privately owned like school, just for black children. And that school has not been built yet, and most people think he's just a con artist and he's full of shit. And now the only thing he can talk about now, because he really has nothing good to talk about, is that he just goes on a tirade talking about men who don't who black men who choose not to date black women. That's the only thing he can talk about. So Umar Johnson is full of shit with his little PhD from a Cracker Jack box. That's my thoughts on Dr. Umar. Um, Amani says, I liked it. I always like your lives. Thanks, Amani. And by the way, guys, I'm not going to answer any questions unrelated to the topic unless you put it in the super chat. So Johnny Miera, put it in the super chat. Trolls who ask me stupid questions, like Rakesh, put in a stupid. If you want me to answer a stupid question, put it in the super chat because you won't waste my time unless you're paying for it. Same thing for Mullet Kid. You guys, if you're gonna troll, you're gonna pay to troll. So, he said. So Wenzel says Umar believes in Pan African socialism. First of all, I'm not an advocate of socialism at all. Um, Democratic socialism has its virtues, but I think and democratic socialism can be done in tangent with capitalism, but most forms of socialism don't work. And I think we've had real life tests of that for the past 60 years of global politics showing that that doesn't work. Um, as far as Pan Africanism, the funny thing is all these pan national movements are the irony of those things is that the whole pan national movements where you're talking about pan Africanism, pan Asianism, um, pan Latino, Hispanic movements, all these pan national movements are actually European in origin because they first started off in Europe with people because they started off with these pan European movements of different social groups within Europe themselves. Uh, Surprise, surprise to non-white people out here, but Europeans are not a monolith, and they've had there's been big ethnic clashes within Europe, and some of these minority ethnic groups within Europe have started these pan-national movements back in the early 1900s. And the irony is that Africans and Asians and others who were educated in Europe came back with these ideas to their own country. So, yeah, Pan African socialism is just bullshit, to, to put it succinctly. Manadip says, hello, brother. What's up, Manadip? When's the nicest? I think you're a very sensible man. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yash says, where are you from, brother? I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, which is now number one in homicide. Woohoo! We're number one. Yay! Another democratically run city going to shit. Uh, but good old Mayor Brandon doesn't see it that way. He have him tell it about Baltimore. We're down in all sorts of crime. We're down in property crime. We're down in violent crime. We're down in theft and burglary. But quality of life crime has gone up. But oh no, we've dropped the levels of crime have dropped several years ago. I mean within the last several years. but we're still number one. We're the still, but right now we're the number one homicide capital of the country. So woohoo, number one, yay! That's where I'm from. And shout out to the other tether, Wes Moore. Yes, the first so-called black governor of Maryland is he's another tether. His mother was from Cuba and Jamaica. Not sure about his father since he said his father died when he was a baby, but he's a tether. His mother's from Cuban and Jamaican origins. Grew up in Jamaica, and Westmore was born in Tacoma Park, Maryland, which is a suburb of Washington D.C. Yet he claims to be a Baltimore native, which he ran on that lie last year. No, sorry, 2 years ago when he got elected as governor of Maryland, he ran on the lie that he was a Baltimore, Maryland native. No, he's not. He was born in Tacoma Park, Maryland, which is completely outside of the Baltimore region, within the DC suburbs. Tacoma Park is literally right there on the border of Northwest DC, and ended up being after his father died when he was like 3 years old or whatever, was raised in the Bronx, New York. Because again, his mother's Cuban and Jamaican. Most half 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 to two-thirds of the so-called black people in New York are mostly from the Caribbean, Latin America, or Africa. So most of them aren't actually foundational black Americans. The most you'll probably see of actual black people in New York City is probably like Harlem. Well, it used to be the case. Well, living outside of like outside of the city, like New Jersey or somewhere. But anyway, he's another tether. He's letting Maryland go to shit. He's very accomplished, but he's full of shit, and it shows because every democratically run city, every black democratically run city, I'm gonna put even more qualifications on it. Every city run by a black Democrat is shit right now. Anywho, Godlike says, hello, I'm back. What we talking about now? Oh, don't call me Diddy because I don't want that association with that guy. He is going down in a bad way. Pause. Um, he but yeah, I'm not gonna get into Diddy right now. But yeah, the title is if you didn't see the title, the title is that um, black people are tired of tethers using them to get elected. Oh, Miss Nito's in the house. Okay, what's up, Miss Nito? I didn't know you were here. Oh, and guys, if you get a chance, check out my live stream yesterday with Miss Nito. We did like a long, about a 3 hour live stream yesterday. It got a little choppy at times, but a lot of good info. She gave us some insight into her musical background and career and all the pitfalls with it. Miss Nita says, "Yeah, busy day trying to be around." Okay, are you gonna be at home for most of the day? BS says Dwayne Johnson. Yeah, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. His father. You didn't know his father was black. His mother is Hawaiian, Native Hawaiian. But yeah, his father. Um, that's where he got his name, and both his father and his grandfather, his Hawaiian side, his grandfather, were both professional wrestlers. His father used to wrestle for the WWF in the early days. Um, he was a foundational Black American. Wednesday night says I think defunding the police won't help it either. Well, I never mentioned defunding the police, but yeah, I don't believe in that either. Um, the Black communities are riddled with violent crime, and yeah, defunding the police is a bad idea. I think what it is how you allocate their resources. Like Militarizing the police isn't helping them. It's giving them better. One is giving them better resources and through like training and stuff like that. Another thing is stop sending police out to handle jobs that should be done by social workers. That that would keep more police where we need them instead of them answering like these little stupid little scenarios that could be probably better handled by like a social worker. But yeah, I don't believe in defunding the police now. If you want to allocate resources to other things so that police could better do their job at protecting people and property, then I think that makes sense. When this is, I think you deserve a lot more subs. I appreciate it. Hopefully that will come. And Miss Nia says, "Don't stray off topic." I won't. Like you talking about my fan. She says, "Actually looking through files, maybe to find some intro music for your channel." Oh, cool. That would be awesome. So, guys, I might have an intro that Miss Needle can come up with. So that would be awesome. She's a musician for people who don't know, from a German musician, and you guys need to check out her channel. Is she makes her own videos and stuff like that, like music videos. And this looks like stuff you would have seen like on MTV or VH1 back in the day before they stopped showing actual music. I don't even know why they still call it MTV when they don't show music. I don't know why they even still have the VMAs. Like, why do they still have the Video Music Awards and they don't show music videos? Like, I don't see the point of the VMA anymore. That should have stopped long time ago. Just let YouTube do music awards from now on. When's it nice is I think better training and more participation from African American veterans, um, and the community would definitely help. Uh, yeah, I mean the the problems with the crime in the community is multifaceted. Some people like to just reduce it to poverty, and that's not it. Because there's people living at the same levels of poverty in other parts of the city who don't have the same levels of crime in their communities, like the old Chinatowns and Latino communities. Um, but yeah, these people aren't experiencing the same crime. And like I said, we have these elected leaders that aren't really helping. Meanwhile, some of these Republican led cities don't experience nowhere near the same levels of crime. And in fact, when you have the funny thing is when you've elected uh, often like Republican leaders into places that were strongly Democrat cities, the levels of crime went down. Like we all know how crime went down in New York City when Giuliani came into office. He did not play. Did the police possibly go too far? Yeah, but it took it it made New York City safer. Under Giuliani, New York became like this more welcoming city. Like Times Square became a Times Square is now like a tourist attraction. Back in the 80s and even early 90s, Times Square was a red light district in New York City. Miss Nina says actually looking. Oh no, you already read that. I'm sorry. But yeah, so she might give me an intro, guys, which would be really really cool. um, but yeah, so getting back to the whole Tethers versus Black American thing. So again, I have nothing against these folks. Like many of my friends come from the Caribbean, the African continent, or Latin America, and for the most part, I see them as brothers. What the part where we start calling them tethers is when these same folks disparage Black Americans, but have used all but have taken advantage of the opportunities that Black Americans have fought so hard for, like the civil rights, or like affirmative action. Like the funny thing was when affirmative action first came into place, it was supposed to be only for like Black Americans. And then I think in some of the documents they refer to as the freedmen. But who became the biggest benefactors of affirmative action were white women. So, and then when it wasn't white women, it was immigrants. So, actual Black American people didn't really get much out of affirmative action, all the despite all the the racist whistles claiming that they were. Asian Americans were duped into Asian Americans were duped into fighting against affirmative action and getting it removed as a part of college admissions because they thought it was hurting them getting into college because they had to compete for those same covered coveted admissions as supposedly like some black or brown person whose only reason for getting in there was affirmative action, and that simply wasn't true. For those coveted spots at the most elite universities, the people they're competing with are legacy students, people whose family are wealthy alumni who have a shoe in into getting into those coveted admissions at those elite universities. Those were their main competition, not the one or two black or brown people who might get in through affirmative action. And again, most of those people who got in through affirmative action themselves were immigrants, not actual black people. Asians were getting in through affirmative action because the fact of the matter is, in many universities, particularly like in California or the elite universities of the Northeast, they were overrepresented in the undergraduate population. Therefore, a lot of these uh, administrators for these for these universities were actually trying to restrict how many Asians they had coming into these universities, or they would make up the majority of the undergraduate population. That's what was working against them. Their very success was working against them, and it was actually affirmative action was actually helping more of them get in because otherwise, like I said, a lot of these administrators on these campuses were using were actually claiming that they didn't want so many Asians on the campuses because they would be overrepresented. That was what was hurting them, not black people. But again, they list some of these Asian Americans was duped into listening to these racist dog whistles saying, "Oh, it's these black people with affirmative action that's preventing them from getting onto these coveted um, admissions for different colleges and universities." And now that affirmative action is gone, a lot of them this year have been upset at the admissions process saying, wait, now we're not getting into school as much because they removed affirmative action. Aha! Aha! Gotcha. We got them. So they listened they listened to those little supremacists talking points and thought that those little racist dog whistles about affirmative action and black people was the reason why they weren't getting into school, and it wasn't. And now they realize now that affirmative actions is gone, that they're getting less placement into these elite universities because now they still have to fight against the legacy students who were always their main rivals. Oh well, c'est la vie. Let me make sure I caught all these comments here. Yep, I think I've seen everything. By the way, guys, do you guys like my little lo-fi I have in the background? It's not actually you can't hear that well. It says calmness in the ring, samurai meditation music um, to relax your mind and release stress, focus. But all I hear is the raindrops from the this little AI generated music. I really don't hear music coming from it, and it's just like a port. It's like a picture of like a guy who I suppose is like a samurai warrior, like sitting there meditating under a temple in the rain. Guess he can stand the rain. Windsor says, "Do you think there should be proper checks put in place for distinguishing between tethers and African Americans in universities?" I do think so, and actually that is starting to happen, Windsor. So the new census, the new U.S. Census poll has been talked about heavily, where there's going to be a lot of changes. Like there's going to be more separations of different Asian groups because a lot of people within the Asian Pacific Islander community want to separate themselves because they don't all see themselves alike. Because you're like they're grouping like dozens of different ethnic groups all into one camp, and highly they have major differences amongst them. I mean, just geographically, like Southeast Asians from East Asians is a big difference, and Pacific Islanders from Asians is a big difference, and uh, Indian people who are Indian or South Asian um, descent don't see themselves as Asians. Most of them just see themselves as Indian or Desi, so they want to separate them. And Middle Eastern people are now being, I think, being lumped in as North Africans instead of as Asian people. So it'll be Middle Eastern and North African as a separate designation from Asian as well. Um, and I don't know what they're gonna do with Central Asian, Eastern Europe, whatever, but they're being distinguished, and Black people are gonna be able to distinguish like themselves. So you'll have people who consider themselves of Black American origin separated from people of Caribbean, Latino, or African continent descent. So that's already starting to happen. Um, I don't know how. I'm not sure if they're going to do that on the collegiate level. It'll probably that'll probably differ from school to school. To be honest, Amir, that's not part of my conversation today. So if you want to talk about something that has nothing to do with my topic, drop it in the super chat. I'm not here to give you therapy. But if you guys want to ask issues dealing with psychological problems, go to betterhelp.com. I'm not answering people's psychological problems. If you're gonna ask me something like that, drop it in the super chat. Uh, Wise up 786 man. You went old school with the wicker straw wall piece in the background. Yeah, because this is a grandparent's house, so this isn't stuff of my own design. Like if if you guys have been like watching me for like the past at least the past 3 months or so, you've seen my room, well, one of my bedrooms, um, of more of my design, because you'll see like I've had like my well, American bedroom, I had my degrees on the wall and like some comic book artwork. Like I had an autograph Batman picture from Neil Adams. On the other side, I had like a old 1950s Batman and Robin cover art, stuff like that. Uh, and it's a darker wall color. So this is old school. Miss Nito keeps saying that this was some like hand me down from like decades ago, and that it looks like something people would be like out in a tropical island where they're like fanning you or something, which would be hilarious. One's nice says, I apologize for these Asian races in the chat. I'm from East Asia and have much respect and admiration for you. I appreciate it, Windsor. And yeah, like I said, so what, like I'm saying, I think this they're going to do the same thing in the U.S. Census poll, Windsor, with Asians as they are with Black people. I think they're going to be able to more tease them apart. And I'm not just talking about geographically. I think they're going to tease them apart by nationality too. Like I think the Hmong are going to be able to separate themselves now. Like I think Hmong are going to be able to claim because Hmong. Well, like I need to tell you, right? But so the Hmong are like originally from mainland China, but most of them have settled within Southeast Asia. So it's going to be so they'll be able to um, be on the U.S. Census, claim themselves as Southeast Asians. It won't just be one lump. It won't just be one lump group of Asian like they've done for like generations. Like all these groups of Asians will be able to separate themselves. Southeast Asians, Northeast Asians, Pacific Islanders, uh, people from the Indian subcontinent, and Middle Easterners. Like all of them will be able to separate themselves into separate groups. So, but I don't get worried about trolls. Wise up 76 says, "Tell me you are Gen X without telling you are Gen X." Ooh, what's a good give? What's another good giveaway besides? I mean, obviously my age and my surroundings. Oh, I got something just for you, Wise 786. If this ain't Gen X, I don't know what is. Look at that. If you were born anytime after the 80s, you have no idea what that is. This is a Bell Systems truck made by Tonka Toys. Tonka Toys is now owned by Hasbro. Just about everything everything that isn't like Mattel or some other like major toy group has folded under Hasbro within the last 30 years. Tonka being one of them. This is a Bell Systems truck. I'm actually trying to sell it. I'm probably gonna take it next time I go to this comic book store. They have a separate store to sell them stuff. I'm gonna see how much I can get for that. I saw it as much as $100 on eBay, but Bell Systems, for people who don't know, was the or Mom Bell was the original phone company that pretty much was like a monopoly throughout the entire country up until 1982, where they were ordered to separate because they violated the Sherman Act. Basically, they ran afoul of being of antitrust and separated in '84, which is when my grandmother stopped working for Bell. She used to work as one of their phone operators because they used. If people ever watch Mad Men or anything from the 50s or 60s or 70s, you actually had people individually would when you asked for an operator, it was an actual person on that line. When you dialed zero for an operator, it was an actual person who would patch you into somewhere you needed to, like you dial zero and say, "Hey, I need the police or I need the fire company or can you connect me with with Joe Schmo over at such and such place," and it would be a actual operator on that end who would physically connect you to another to those other uh, places. And Bell Systems was broken up into all the baby bells like Bell Atlantic and all the other regional phone companies all across the company. They were all originally owned by AT&T, but when they broke up, AT&T only retained the long distance and the and something else. But AT&T became later known just for long distance, but AT&T was the whole shebang back then, which was then called Bell Systems. So that's I think that is Gen X. That's definitely Gen X. Wise up says, "Oh shit, Tonka. I had the red one. Do you remember the one from Hess gas station? Yep. I didn't have the Hess. I didn't have the regular Hess gas station one. I had the one that was a model kit, and I think my stepfather bought that for me, and I never made the model, which was weird because afterwards I was like, man, I should have made that model, and I lost it. But yeah, I had the Hess gas station one, but the one you put together. So I had that too. And I'm actually tempted to keep this, but if I can get some money for it, I will, because I want to give that money to my wife so she can buy some new camping equipment. And to be honest, I really don't have much nostalgia for this train for this truck anyway. Because once I started getting like GI Joe and He Man and GI Joe and Transformers and GoBots and everything else, I didn't even remember this thing. That's why I was at my grandmother's house. So definitely Gen X, right? And like I said, it's still this is pretty good condition. Like still got this in the plastic. So I'm hoping I get like at least like I don't know like 25, $30 for it. We'll see. Wise up 76. I still have two Atari 2600s. One of them I won from Captain Crunch. Wait, you could win an Atari back in the Captain Crunch? I didn't know that. That's dope. So I didn't have. Well, I had Atari 2600, but it wasn't mine. It was actually my father's. I used to play it all the time, but it was my father's video game console. But he let me play it all the time, so I was under the illusion that it was mine, but it was really his. My first, like I'll say my first actual video game console that I owned was the Coleco system. And Coleco, looking back at it now, Coleco was kind of weak. Coleco was like, I guess it was like the precursor to Nintendo. Well, not really, because Coleco and Nintendo are two different systems, but a lot of the games on Coleco, were made by Nintendo and Sega and Atari, and the Nintendo Entertainment System. I mean, sorry, the Coleco system actually had the little piece you could put into it that could let you play Atari games. So you could still play both Coleco and Atari on the Coleco system. That was the only thing that put it above the Atari 2600 to me, was the fact that you could buy that little modification and and plug it into the Coleco, and you could play the Atari 2600 games on it. But other than that, the games were kind of whack. Like my favorite system was always going to be the classic Nintendo, which I played that for like 10 years when I got it from like, well, I won't say 10 years, but like from 88 to like 10th grade in high school, even when everyone else was playing Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis and TurboGrafx 16, which I only know one person who actually owned that, or Neo Geo. Clipcatcher is back from yesterday. What's up, Clipcatcher? What's up, Irfan? Um, but yeah, guys. So back to the spicier topic, which is like I said, and again, I'm not trying to offend people who are of Caribbean or African descent, because like I said, at the end of the day, I do consider them my brothers. But just because I consider someone my brother doesn't mean we have the same origins. And I think you know two things can be can hold true at the same time, right? If the thing of it is, so we know this from epistemic, excuse me, epistemic logic. In epistemic logic, why I keep fumbling that word? Sorry. Epistemic logic. Epistemic refers to uh, theories about knowledge and rationality and belief. So anyway, in epistemic logic, um, anything that is true is necessarily consistent with each other. Things can't be true and be inconsistent. So anything that's held true, they're gonna be um, and like internally consistent. Like it they can't. I can't get into the roots of that right now because that'll go too far from the topic. But two things can hold true at the same time because if they are true, they're by by necessity consistent with each other. Truths can't be inconsistent. So anyway, Mike Tyson's Punch Out, hell yeah. So I even played Mike Tyson's Punch Out up until like what was it, like 2005? I think it was like, yeah, I think it was like 2005. I went to a random party. Some of these I was hanging out with some white frat guys, and they was like, "Hey man, you want to come out with us?" I was like, "Yeah, let's go." So we went to this party. This guy gave me a weird shot. This was like the last time I ever drank alcohol, but well, not the last time, but like the second to last time. This guy gave me a weird shot of alcohol with like Tabasco sauce or something in it. I said, "Hey, try this," and I'm like, "All right." And I was like, it tasted horrible, but I don't know. Maybe I think the Tabasco probably made it less bitter or something for some reason. I don't know what he added to it, but for some reason the Tabasco or whatever he added to the shot actually made it go down smoother. No diddy. And we sat down. They were playing Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and I was like, "Yo, can I get a turn?" And they was like, "Yeah." So I played, and they was like, "Oh shit, he knows what he's doing." And I was like, "That's because they don't know how old I am." I'm like, at the time I was what, I'm gonna say like 20, 27, 28, and I'm playing this game, so they don't know I'm this old. Meanwhile, they're like 20, they're like somewhere between 19, 21, 22. And so I was raised playing this game, so I got all the way up to like I think Ball Bull before I've lost, which was good though because I hadn't played it for like this is like yeah 2005. I probably hadn't played it in about almost 10 years unless you consider like a few times on like the little NES ROMs. But to actually have played it on the actual physical Nintendo, like their classical Nintendo system, not the new mini ones that they sell now, but the person whoever's house had the original system. So I hadn't actually played the actual system since like the 90s, and I got up to the first Bowl Bowl. I didn't get up to the second Bowl Bowl. I think it was either yeah. I got past Soda Popinski. No, no, no. Okay, I'm sorry. I did get past the first Bowl Bowl. It was either Soda Popinski or the second Bowl Bowl, and I couldn't get past that. But it was pretty close because after you beat the second Ball Bull, I think that's when you go against Super Macho Man before Mike Tyson. So pretty far. So they were enjoying seeing me go through the whole game and remember all the combos to hit to destroy everybody. So that was cool. But anyway, so yeah, so um, let me put this back. But yeah, like I said, I get tired of these immigrant politicians. Oh, Sandman. You're right. I'm sorry. Wait, Sandman? So is it wait, is it Super am I confusing them? Is this yeah, Sandman? I'm sorry, Duckley. Um so wait, so it's like because I think you do Ball Bull twice, right? And you do Piston Honda twice, right? And then Soda Popinski. And yeah, so after the second Ball Bull, is it the second piston Honda or you go straight to Sandman? Then Sandman, you go to Mike Tyson. And I never got the combo down to beat Mike Tyson. I think I beat Sandman once back as a kid. I think I beat I think I beat Sandman once as a kid. I think or twice. I think at least once or twice I actually beat Sandman, Mr. Sandman, but I can never beat Mike Tyson because remember you could just put in the cheat code and go directly to Mike Tyson instead of fighting your way through. But it wasn't as fun. Like to me, it was more fun to fight all the way through to the end to Mike Tyson. It felt like you like earned it. Whereas when you just put in the passcode to go directly to Mike Tyson, it just felt like this just felt like cheating. Like you didn't earn it because you supposed to work your way to the final boss. But in any case, guys. So yeah, that is my beef with the whole tether thing in a nutshell. It's like they get into office and represent black people, but they don't represent our actual interests. King Hippo was after Ball Bull. Yeah, King Hippo, but King Hippo was easy as hell. Like if as soon as you learned the combo to King Hippo, he was like the easiest boxer next to Glass Joe, which wise up I just mentioned. Yeah, the body shots. Like as soon as you learned the combo, and you didn't even have to be taught because basically we all learned the combos from read Nintendo Power. Like we all got Nintendo Power magazine back then, which was like the greatest thing, like the greatest like video game magazine before like what was the other one like Video Game Informer and Wizard and all of those. I think Nintendo Power is still like the best one at the time, although it was only for Nintendo, whereas the other ones were for all the systems. But yeah, like through trial and error, you would just learn how to beat King Hippo. Because as soon as you learn, oh, he's weak in the body, you would just keep going for it, even if you didn't know that that was the combo that they taught you in Nintendo Power to use against him. All right, but not all right. Enough Nintendo, because that's gonna lead me too far astray. And I know Miss Needle's probably like rolling her eyes at me if she's still up. She might have gone, but she warned me don't stray off topic, and I have. There wasn't any. I don't remember who hugged you on Mike Tyson's Punch Out. I think I think it may have looked like a hug, but I think maybe clenching you. It was like a clench, but I don't remember which one. Hold on, guys. So, so what do you think about VP Walls? I think he's a Wish.com version of Bernie Sanders, and I think he botched up the whole Black Lives Matter protests, and he needs to answer for that. And I think he's lied about his military record. I think he's full of shit. uh, and let's be honest here as well. No one really knew about him until they selected him for VP. Unless you were from Minnesota, no one knew about Waltz. Like no one cared. No one knew about him because I was like I said, outside of people from Minnesota. But it makes sense for a disingenuous VP to be connected to a disingenuous presidential nominee like Kamala Harris. Kamala. The only Kamala I like is Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. Even though her comic book sucks, but that's a different story. I like the character. I just don't like her comic books. Like this is her third run because the first two runs didn't work. Do you think? Well, any president has can get assassinated if someone's highly motivated enough and they have the wherewithal to do it. It can happen. Will it happen? I don't know. But every presidential um, nominee is a potential target. So of course she could. You mean will she? Like could is like yeah she could, but any president could, and I would be just as upset because it's like people were there was people on the left actually salivating at the fact that Trump could have been assassinated, and I thought that was horrible. Like I don't want to see any president, any sitting president get assassinated because that's an attack on our very institution itself. So, say if she did get elected and someone tried to assassinate her, I would be just as upset over someone attempting to assassinate her as I was about Trump almost being assassinated because when people try to do that, it can destabilize the entire nation and it makes us look soft overseas when people see that the most powerful person in the world is can be a target of attack domestically. Um, Wise Up says they should have put an explicit warning on Mike Tyson's punch out for one reason. If you know, you know. Hmm. Um, so Duck Life says white supremacy. No, so again, I would be against. It doesn't have to be a white supremacist. People will attempt. There are a lot of people who have mental health issues, and this is my whole crux against the 2A folks because I consider myself a Second Amendment advocate too, but I don't believe everyone should have a firearm. I believe people who have psychological problems should have no access to weapons. And yes, I know people will say, well, not everyone who has psychological problems is a danger. That is true. But until they start doing like other countries do, like the Philippines, where they actually make you take a psychological evaluation before you can receive, before you can buy a gun, then just just make it anyone who's been diagnosed with psychiatric problems should just not have a gun until they actually can distinguish who's a threat and whom isn't based on their 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 psychological health. Because yes, obviously not everyone who's experienced psychological disorders is a threat, but certain disorders should be automatically just not a good call. Like people who've had who've been hospitalized for depression, people who've had um, any sort of psychotic or delusional disorders. Um, that, but anyway, it's not just it's just not white supremacy. It's just basically dangerous people who plan on doing bad things can be can be people who can be potential political assassins. So it's up to the Secret Service um, and other people within federal law enforcement to prevent that. He said, "Does Waltz have a political background?" Yeah, he was the like the governor of Minnesota or whatever. Governor of Minnesota or senator of Minnesota, whatever he was. Yeah, he's so like I said, he's a wish. He's a wish.com version of Bernie Sanders. All right. Well, Duck Life, that's not completely relevant to the topic, but I'll take this one last one and that's it because I want to put it back on the actual topic of politics. Usually, usually I'm avoiding politics in my conversations, but now this is the actual meat and bones of the conversation. But Duck Life says, how do you feel about rappers and athletes calling themselves savages and apes? No, knowing that white supremacists used to call black people. I haven't heard them calling themselves apes, but savages is a term that's not even a term within just the black community anymore. Savage just means like someone who just goes like someone who goes very hard. Like that's not even something just germane to the black community. It probably like most slang, it probably started within the black community, but it hasn't been just part of the black community for like a long time now. Like everyone uses the term savage. Like yo that dude is a straight savage. Like everyone says that now. And savage wasn't something only there was a slur to black people. Like savage has been savage has been a word used for a very long time for a lot of people. Like those people are savages. Like that was not just a slur towards black people. Apes, yes, but I haven't heard really rappers calling themselves apes. And well, I haven't listened to recent rap music, so if they're now referring to each other as apes, that's a new thing to me. But there's a thing in linguistics where in cultural linguistics where people can repurpose a derogatory term as sort of a term of endearment within that very group. So that happens all the time. So that happen like um, so within the LGBT community, they've repurposed words like queer and FAG and stuff like that, which used to be derogatory terms for them. Black people have often repurposed the word NIGGER um, as some as women have repurposed the word BITCH. That's that's a pretty common phenomenon in cultural linguistics. So, and and guys, if you're gonna leave a comment, leave it in English. I'm not gonna respond to something in another language. Jalen says, "Hey man, what's up, Jalen?" Ducklight says, "Silverback is ape." I haven't heard of that. That's a rapper named Silverback. I haven't heard of that. So, but that's not saying the word ape. That's just saying silverback. So, that's a little bit of a stretch. I mean, I get it, but that's a little bit of a stretch. And in fact, we're all actually apes. Yeah, I think you mean silverback is a type of gorilla. So if I wanted to be pedantic, humans are apes. Well, we're part of the great ape family. So, oh, athletes and rappers call themselves silverbacks. I get it because they're talking about basically how basically that's kind of a reference to saying how tough and strong they are. I don't have a problem with it. That's not a big issue. Like I said, in cultural linguistics is a long-standing history of people repurposing derogatory terms as terms of endearment within a specific community. Also, people can take words that were benign, well, I would say words that were emotionally benign and add some sort of heft to them that they didn't normally have. Like gay. Gay traditionally just used to mean happy, but it was used colloquially to refer to homosexual men. So, what's up, Princess Lady? How are you? Thinking about doing another members only video. Oh, that's right. You haven't had access to those. I'm doing fine. Got my trusty water here. Well, not just water. This has a little some electrolytes mixed in it because it's the things that plants crave. If you ever saw the movie Idiocracy, but yeah. So getting back to the actual. Oh, I got the you got the same bottle, really? That's cool. So how's it going out there in Dorset? You said I think. Water's good for you. I love water. True. Coffee's better. But oh, UK London. Okay, I gotta hear the accent one day. So, all right. So getting back to the topic, guys. So like I said, the what was your topic? The topic is that tethers need to stop pretending to be black people to get elected. That was the topic. Like I said, my our very own mayor. I mean, not mayor. Governor of Maryland is another tether. Not only not only does he come off, saying he's black, which is questionable. Maybe on his father's side he is, but I mean, like I said, the dude even lied about where he grew up. He didn't have to. He lied about being a Baltimore native, which I don't know why. He didn't have to lie and say he was a Baltimore native to capture the hearts of people in Maryland and in Baltimore specifically. They would have just voted on him. I mean, they would have just voted for him just based on whether they thought he was the right guy for the job, which most of them did. I didn't. I During the midterms, I just refused to vote. I stayed home. I just had no I had I had no care whatsoever on the midterm elections, which is a shame because midterm elections are actually more important than presidential elections, but topic for another day. But he got elected, and like I said, he claimed he was a Baltimore native, and I don't know why he claimed he was from Baltimore when he never he he was born in Tacoma Park and stayed there to about he was 3 when his father died, then moved with his mother to the New York City and was raised out there, and didn't come back to Baltimore until he went to Johns Hopkins as an undergrad. I'm sorry, doing 4 years of undergrad at some place does not make you a native of that city. It simply doesn't. Now, if you go on to live in that city after you graduate, cool. But to say you are a Baltimore native, that was just a patently false. Because even after undergrad, he went on to grad school back up north and was actually a Rhodes Scholar, which kudos to him. That means he's exceptionally gifted. When you become a Rhodes Scholar, you actually do a bachelor's in at Oxford University, which then when you come back to America matriculates into a master's degree. He did that. and he served in the army and became an investment banker and stuff like that before he ran for office. And if you see Westmore, he's a very he's an Obama wannabe type candidate. You can see so much that he tries to model himself after Obama. He's about my age, by the way. He's like 45. Very accomplished, and if it was just on his accomplishments, I would give him his props. But I didn't like his politics, and I found him very disingenuous. And like I said, a lot of his policies don't really help black people, but he wants us to think he's a black candidate, and he's not. He's a tether. His mom is Cuban and Jamaican. Um, Carlitos says, "Are you a member of the LGBTQ community?" I'm just gonna assume you never seen my streams before. So if you want to answer, leave it in the super chat because I don't answer dumbass questions from dumbass people. Yeah, Princess Lee said, I don't know why people lie like that. Yeah, it was like I said, it wasn't even advantageous for him to lie. Because like I said, no one cared if he was actually from Baltimore or not. I don't know why he lied. Like being from Tacoma Park, which is a suburb of Washington D.C., it's a very nice place to live, and it's like literally on the border of Washington D.C. That is not no one from that area would be considered someone from Baltimore. Like no more than someone from Cambridge would be considered from Oxford. So um, it's like two different things. Like, but and because there's a rivalry, but for people who don't know, there's a long standing like social rivalry between Baltimore City and Washington D.C. So to say for someone to be from D.C. claiming they're from Baltimore, that's like no, you're like set tripping. That's like a blood claiming they're a crip. Okay. Doug Light said Kamala's Jamaican and Asian, right? Yeah, well, yeah, Jamaican and East Indian. She's not black. She's a tether. Doug Light says Waltz had 20 people in his graduating class. He lived in a small window. I don't know. He looks old as dirt, but he's actually not. Like that's that's the sad thing. I think he's not that much older than Kamala. She's 60. I think Waltz is maybe what 61 or something like that. He just looks old as fuck. Probably too much estrogen in his diet. But yeah, so and there's other tethers. I if I weren't voting for Trump, I would be tempted to vote for Cornel West. I don't really like his politics, but at least he's an actual black person who was running for office. And I think he's still actively running, but mainstream media has suppressed like any information on his campaign because he was a threat to Biden and he would be a threat to Harris. And now she's feeling the heat because she was actually up in the polls last week. At least according to some polls, she was ahead of Trump in the polls. However, that's switched now. The RFK has dropped out of the race and has endorsed Trump. That that will help Trump because a lot of those people who may have split the vote will probably vote for Trump now or just stay home. And RFK Jr. was always a threat to more Biden because originally he was running as a Democrat, and then the DNC said we're not going to allow anyone to primary Biden because there was another guy who uh, was going to try to run against Biden as well. They shut him down, and then there was also this woman. Can't remember her name, but she's this new age sort of person. I can't remember her name. She I don't know if she's still in it, but so Cornel West originally was running under the Reform Party because they weren't going to let him run as a Democrat because they knew he would take black votes away from Biden. So he went to the Reform Party. The Reform Party started to crumble because of some internal problems with the Reform Party. So he then switched over to the Green Party, and then the Green Party decided they wanted to bring back Dr. Jill Stein as their candidate instead. So he left the Green Party and now was running as an independent. And then that was the last thing I've heard of Cornel West. But he's a very accomplished person. He's a professor of philosophy at, I think, either at Howard, I mean, excuse me, either at Harvard or at MIT. Um, and so he having someone run for office who was actually a philosopher would be quite the accomplishment. But he didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of winning. But if he was still on the ballot, I would have been tempted to vote for him. But I'm not even sure if he's still actively running. He may have. I'll have to Google it actually after I get off of here to see whether he uh he dropped his campaign because I literally haven't heard from him in like 3 or 4 months since he decided to be an independent. And the last thing I heard was when the someone dropped some dirt on him saying that he was having issues with child support and stuff like that, trying to call him a deadbeat dad, which is a common a common insult to lobby at black men, which is why I haven't. This is why I didn't have any children before I got married. My wife and I still haven't had kids, but I was glad to have not made that mistake because I don't need that. I don't need that stereotype, and I don't need that baggage of kids from kids from a woman I'm no longer with. That yeah, that would be horrible. But at least like I said, at least Dr. Cornel West is not a tether. He is a Southern black man, and to more fully differentiate that of foundational black Americans from the later black immigrants who've come to the country from the Caribbean and Africa and Latin America. So we can say, for the most part, foundational black Americans, and not all of them were slaves, which is why I don't use the term ADOS or American Descendants of Slavery, because while most of them were slaves, not all of them were. So I think foundational black Americans is a more correct term created by Tariq Nasheed. Shout out to him. I'm pretty sure he doesn't watch my content, and pretty sure he would disagree with most of the stuff that I talk about here anyway. But shout out to the brother anyway. Um, he came up with the term because black people arrived here in 1619, the very foundation of America, and fought in literally every war. And so, foundational Black Americans more or less are the people who came to this country prior to 1860, mostly to the American South, whereas people who came later in mostly the 20th century and 21st centuries were mostly immigrants from the Caribbean and Africa and Latin America. But the original people who came here prior to 1860 weren't immigrants and came here against their will. So Yeah, I'm not talking about Star Wars. That's gonna take me too far off topic. But yeah, so like I said, that is the definition of foundational Black Americans. People, Black people who can trace their ancestry to people brought who came to this country prior to 1860, usually as slaves, but not necessarily so, and you know, basically have been here for a, a few centuries now. Whereas these other folks who came later are more or less immigrants coming here of their own volition and taking advantage of all the hard fought privileges that these FBA or foundational Black Americans achieved, while at the same time making fun of the culture of those very Black people. I really don't have an opinion on immigration in the UK because I haven't been there, so I don't have a strong opinion on it. Um, not to be so terse about it, but yeah, I don't have enough information on immigration in the UK to have a strong opinion about it. Plus I don't know their immigration policies either, so that's another reason I can't really talk on it. Shoot, it's hard to find out in what are American immigration policies right now. We really don't know. We literally now have a an apartment complex that was taken over by a Venezuelan prison gang here in America. A Venezuelan prison gang has taken over an entire apartment complex. Like this was like New Jack City. The Rwandan genocide. That's not really my topic here. I'm talking about an American. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something going on here in America. I'm talking about Black people versus Tethers and Black Americans versus Tethers. I'm not talking about international issues. I can't speak on the Rwandan genocide and stuff like that. And that was like what 20 something, 25 something years ago. That's that's neither here. That's not a current event. Ducklight says, "Do you think that bridge in Maryland was purposely knocked down?" No, no. I think that was just I think that was just incompetence because they've already excuse me, they've already been talking about the investigation going on. I think that amounted to some incompetence. That's what happened, which is bad because that's a major thoroughfare for Maryland and for this part of the East Coast as well. So that was a huge setback, and I mean, luckily it happened late at night, so there wasn't that many people on that bridge. Because during the daytime, there would have been a lot of people crossing that bridge. Brain dead boy, you keep talking about stuff that has not. That's I don't know if you looked at the topic before you clicked on here, but those your questions you're asking me have nothing to do with my topic. If you're gonna ask me a question not related to the topic, drop it in a super chat because it's not germane to my topic. My topic is I'm talking about American issues. I haven't. I can't talk about stuff going on with things outside of America, like the opioid crisis by Mexican cartels. That is a separate issue. And and to be honest, the opioid crisis isn't it couldn't be a crisis by Mexican cartels if they weren't getting it from a certain if the floodgates weren't opened by a certain Asian country, which I'm not going to mention on here because YouTube doesn't like when you talk badly about that country. But yeah, Duck Life says Harper Hill is running for office in Michigan and he's not from Michigan. Yeah, like I said, I don't have a problem with someone not being from that very place running for that place if they're honest about it. Like I said, he Wes Moore is actually from Maryland, so I just don't get the reason why he felt he had to lie and say he was from Baltimore. Like I said, yes, he lived 4 years as an undergrad going to Johns Hopkins. That does not make him a Baltimore native. That's just weird to do. Like if you're so, if you were born in, if you were born in Chicago and then grew up in Indiana and then you move you went to Michigan to go to Michigan State or University of Michigan Ann Arbor, whichever, for 4 years, and then you move from Michigan to like New York or something, and then you move back to Michigan to run for office, you're not a Michigan native. Like you're like you were it was like no, you were born in Illinois, you were raised in Indiana, then you went to Michigan for 4 years as a college undergrad, and then you moved to New York and made your career, and then you came back as a politician. That doesn't make you a Michigan native. That's how crazy Westmore what he did. Where did I serve? Uh, Oh, military. So, hey, again, not really part of the topic, but I went to I served partly at Fort Detrick, mostly Fort Detrick. Ducklight says Obama is from Hawaii but claims Chicago. Right. So with his, so at least he has a little bit more. Well, at least he has a little bit more nuance than Westmore does. So yeah. So yeah, Obama grew up in Hawaii and then in Indonesia for several years as well. When his mom remarried this Indonesian man, that's how he became fluent in the Indonesian language, but Bahasa Indonesian, and then moved back to Hawaii. So mostly Hawaii, and then like 3 or 4 years in Indonesia, whatever. He, he didn't even go to mainland United States until he went to college. He first went to Occidental College in California, then transferred his last 2 years to Columbia University in New York City, and then went to Chicago like when he was like 22 as a community activist and served and did that for like 3 years, 2 years, 3 years, something like that, and went on to Harvard Law. But he came back to Chicago as a law professor, and he was a law professor. And he ran for as a state senator. So he did have at least he did have ties to Illinois and Chicago before he ran as a U.S. senator because he before he was a before he became a junior U.S. senator, he was a state senator in Illinois, and he was a Harvard law professor there. So he was actually actively living there. But like I said, Westmore wasn't actively living in Baltimore. I'm not even sure he was living in Maryland prior to running for office as a politician because before that he was like an investment banker or somewhere in New York City or whatever. Brain Dead Boy says thanks, no problem. But yeah, I mean, it's a minor point that he lied about where he was from. The only reason I kept harping about it is because the way I looked at it is, if you lie about something that small, then will you not probably lie about big things as well? That was my issue. That and he was trying too hard to like be like Barack Obama. Neko says you look like a weaker Shannon Sharp. I don't care. I can beat your ass though. I can fight. At the end of the day, guys, I can fight. So I don't give a fuck about trolls like you. I can fight at the end of the day. I don't care, Duck. Like I said, at the end of the day, I can fight. I don't care what he thinks. And like, I literally look nothing like Shannon Sharp. We don't look alike. We don't sound alike. We're not built alike. But yeah, anyway, so getting back to what you're saying, yeah, Obama, like at least, like I said, he actually, at least he had like long-standing ties with Chicago and with Illinois from living and working there after he left college. He didn't like just simply go to college in Chicago and say, "Hey, I'm a Chicago native." No, he had, excuse me, he actually served as a community activist within the ghetto for like 2 or 3 years. Um, which is when he met Michelle, um, because she was already going to Harvard Law when he met her. So at least according to his autobiography, like that, I guess inspired him to go to Harvard Law because she was going there. So um, after he came from like, and while he was at Harvard Law, he actually became the first uh, black president of Harvard Law. But again, I'm not calling him the first black president of Harvard Law because he's not black. He's a tether, and I will die on that hill, not literally, but figuratively. All right, Neko, you can go bye bye. I don't have to lie to myself. You can check out my videos. You can check out my videos if he think I'm capping. Um, Duck Life says, so why isn't DC a part of Maryland? Seems like it's Maryland when I was there. You're not American, are you? So, or actually, you might be American. Some Americans don't know this too. So, I'll explain it. So, DC was a portion of Maryland that was given to the federal government to be a separate district. So Washington D.C. is a federal district. It's not part of any state. It borders between both Maryland and D.C. Um, but it's considered a part of the federal government. And so, actually, up until the 70s, there was no mayor or city council of Washington D.C. because the city was governed by Congress. And even now, after they put into law that they could have a city council and mayor, Congress actually has the power to veto any decision made by the DC mayor and city council. But no, so Annapolis and DC are not the same. Annapolis is the state capital, but DC is the federal district of the entire country. Get what I'm saying? So it's all it's all federal government property. Like I don't know how to explain it because it's the only literally the only only part of the country that's like that way. But it's DC isn't part of any state. It's its own entity. This is why, like, if say like you commit crimes in DC, it is a federal crime because it's a federal district. So that's the only way I can explain it. And unfortunately, like for college students, up until like the 2000s, if they lived in DC, when they applied to any school outside of DC, it was always considered out of state for them. So that kind of sucked because they would have to pay out of state prices for any school they went to outside of the DC region. the DC borders, but they changed that law back in like the 2000s so that now DC residents, when they apply to colleges, now they can apply for in-state tuition to any state in the country, I believe. But that used to suck if you lived in DC. If you applied to school in Maryland or Virginia, it would be like out of state tuition. But I believe now that's been rectified. Like I think they can get in-state tuition in any state in the country. I'll have to Google it. I don't know if it's any state within the nation or just Maryland and Virginia. I'm not sure, but I know for sure Maryland and Virginia they can get in-state tuition now. But before in the past they couldn't. No, there's no state taxes in DC because it's not a it's not a state. There's no state taxes. They get charged for local tax and federal taxes. So the problem is, so people have, but there has been a movement for like the last, I'm gonna say 40, at least 40, 30 years to give DC statehood. So there has been an ongoing campaign for like almost 30, 40 years to make DC a state. Um, and it hasn't been decided upon yet because as DC residents have complained, they was like, look, we still have to pay taxes, but we get no representation in Congress. Like that's not literally true. Like so there are DC delegates that are appointed to represent them within Congress, but there's no there's no DC senators for DC. Ironically. So everyone is represented except for people in DC whom still have to pay local and federal taxes, but they get no representation. And that was sort of the whole big thing back in the 1700s with the American colonists separating from Great Britain was no taxation without representation. And so people in DC have been saying that for like the last 30, 40 years. Like we sh- there's no taxation without representation. So they're saying either give us statehood or we shouldn't have to pay taxes. And then of course they still want to pay taxes, but it's still like an open and a open line of legal inquiry whether they will ever give DC statehood, just like they've been debating giving Puerto Rico statehood. But yeah, so that but yeah, that I think that wraps that up. So anyway, like I said, so there's a lot of black folks, not just in politics, but also in entertainment. No, I'm sorry, not black tethers in the entertainment as well as politics that go out and pretend to be black people because it's advantageous to do so. I'm trying to see if I can name a few. Kai Sinat. A lot of people know him from Twitch, and he's famous on YouTube as well because a lot of stuff he does over there on Twitch gets put over here on YouTube as well. I think he has his own YouTube channel as well. He's a tether. He talked a lot of trash a few months ago about black people, but his whole swag is is comes from Black American culture. A lot of his supporters are Black Americans. A lot of the celebrities that come onto his platform are Black Americans, but he's gonna sit there and trash Black Americans, say you guys don't really have no culture and this and that. If that's the case, then why are you biting our culture that we supposedly don't have? All these tethers will come here and take from Black American culture while simultaneously denigrating it, and that's why we started calling them tethers. Doc Light says, do you think not paying federal taxes could be a way of reparations? Uh, it could be, but if you ask most people who are in favor of reparations, most people want cash reparations. Because the worst thing is to sit there and give reparations and then tell people how they can, in what form they can have it. Most people say, no, just give us the cash. We'll decide how we'll use it. Not, okay, we'll make it a tax, like we'll make it a tax deduction, or we'll give you free college, which not everyone goes to college, right? Or some other sort of like social welfare like that. People just want the overwhelmingly want the cash reparations. But it's a twofold war. One is to acknowledge, hey, we're gonna. One is to have the government acknowledge, hey, yes, we owe you reparations. Then the second is the implementation. So is those are two different battles, right? One is to, like I said, one is to actually have the government acknowledge that they owe the reparations, and then the second battle is how it's going to be actually implemented into those citizens and who count. This is another reason this would be big between black people and tethers, because tethers 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 by and large would not be able to get reparations because they're not part of that they're not a part of the legacy and community that are owed reparations. This is why this causes a big gulf between black people and immigrants from African countries and Caribbean countries. It's because a lot of those same people from those African and Caribbean countries are against reparations, but they're probably against it because they know they are not going to get it. So you're not going to get it just because you look like us. No, you have to you have to be you have to have our you have to share within our cultural past, and they don't. Merkinoy says, what are your thoughts on Paul Simon and his relationship with African culture? Uh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure who Paul Simon is. Is that Afro Caribbean philosopher, or is that someone else? I'm not sure who that is. Doug Life says Indians don't pay taxes. Um, you sure about that? I'm not sure about that. And you only those, and if they aren't paying taxes, those are only the ones who live on a reservation, who live on reservations. The ones who don't live on reservations still pay taxes like every other American. People on reservations have certain benefits if they're enrolled in that tribal nation's membership. But um, that is a further reason why black people should possibly get reparations, because literally everyone else has. Jewish people receive some reparations. Japanese people receive some reparations. Um, Native Americans receive reparations. Some other groups have. I'm not going to go into all the different groups, but so there's an argument for foundational Black Americans receiving reparations. But again, I think that might be why it's so important for this new U.S. Census to tease apart people who are of foundational Black American heritage from those who are of immigration of African and Caribbean immigration status. So, what do you think of Pell Grant? Should they use it for all Black people and not just for the poor as a way of reparations? No, no, they should be for what they're for um, students who need it. Giving giving Pell Grants to people who don't need it is a waste of is a waste of money. That wouldn't make sense to me. Like, why would you just give Pell Grants to people if they don't actually need it? That would cause a lot of, and justifiably so, a lot of like ill will because of that. No, I wouldn't be. That's literally just throwing money away if you're giving money to people who don't actually need it. Sort of like all these, sort of like all these uh, illegal immigrants right now in parts of the country with walking around with $10,000 on their EBT cards. That's a waste of money. Like we know it wasn't just one person, so we've actually seen the bless the bless that lady who took a screenshot of that immigrant's receipt, showing that person had about uh like $13,000 in EBT food benefits and $5,000 in cash benefits on their EBT card. And this other lady, she's working at Walmart, and she's saying like all these people are walking, all these immigrants are coming through Walmart, all having like a lot of money on these EBT cards. So it's not just one person; like it's a bunch of them with like $10,000 on these food stamps. Where's that money coming from? Meanwhile, there's elderly people who are only getting like $40 a month on their food stamps. Elderly and disabled people who are only getting $40 on food stamps. Disabled veterans who aren't receiving enough money, but they can give it to these illegal immigrants. They can somehow federal government has found ways to give like thousands of immigrants uh, food stamp benefits with like $10,000 worth of food and cash benefits on it. Deport them all. MD, you're not gonna come here saying F Jews. Nope, you're gone. Get your little mm, go take your little oil pumping ass somewhere else. Duck Light says, "What about free education as a form of reparations?" No, like why do you keep asking me? I said cash reparations. I'm not talking about other forms of reparations. You can't. Those you're talking about giving things to people who didn't earn them. Like eh, you can't give free education to someone who who's not even smart enough to go to school. That doesn't make sense. My sister is dumb as a brick. She didn't finish high school and didn't want to go to college, and my mother was forcing me to get her to go to college. And when she didn't do that, she was trying to make her go to beauty school so that she can buy her own beauty parlor. Meanwhile, she didn't give me shit. I put myself through college. No, not everyone should get a free education. If you saying free education for people who earn their spot, that's a different story. But no, that's not reparations because again, most black people aren't going to college. So no, the cash reparations will be for any and all people who are considered foundational black Americans. Education is not going to suffice because not everyone's going off to get an education. Pell Grants for the same reason. Besides that, Pell Grants shouldn't be given to people who don't need the money to go to school. That doesn't make sense. Pell Grants has a very specific allotment for which it is used. That so what you're saying doesn't make sense. Um, Mercury says Paul Simon is a white folk artist from the 1960s musical duo Simon and Garfunkel, who in the 80s started incorporating the African influence into his music. Oh, that's Simon. Okay. um, because when you were saying Paul Simon, I'm thinking, first of all, I'm thinking one of the Beatles. Then when you said Paul Simon, I'm thinking of this Afro Caribbean philosopher from like the 60s or 70s. But I can't really say, since I really didn't listen to Simon and Garfunkel, I really can't talk on their connection to I guess African culture. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know enough about Simon and Garfunkel's music. Why do you think Biden let so many immigrants in? Mm, well, one, because like I said, they just expedited. It was like a week or two ago. They expedited the process for a lot of these immigrants to become U.S. citizens because obviously they assume they'll vote Democrat because they're non. This is how racist Democrats are. They think all non-black people are going to vote Democrat. I mean, all non-white people are going to vote Democrat, and that's simply not the case. Most of these people who actually flee from their countries, whether it's like China or parts of Latin America or other parts of Asia, actually are pretty socially conservative, which is why they're trying to get away from these socialist countries like Venezuela, like China, like North Korea, like Vietnam. Um, a lot of them come here and they've actually turned Republican. So their political hopes is that bringing in more non-white immigrants will help the Democratic Party. That is a big if, and I find it troubling as well that they would do that. But um, Mercanoy says I personally don't consider him a culture vulture. I would go as far as to say he helped African culture by introducing it to a wider audience. Uh, yes, I don't know Simon Garfunkel's music, so I can't say whether he's a culture vulture. I haven't heard him a cold so, but usually when I hear people talking about Simon and Garfunkel, they're just talking about like some of their music from like the '80s or whatever, and people may be making fun of the group or making fun of some of the music or saying they like the music, but talk about. I haven't heard people refer to Paul Simon as a culture vulture because I don't think very many people of this generation are even familiar with him. Like I said, even I'm not really familiar with him. Like the artists I listened to back in the '80s were like, you know, Michael Jordan. I mean, not much. Excuse me, Michael Jackson, Run DMC, um, people like that. Um, a bunch of you know rockers as well, but not not really yeah, Simon. No, I'm not talking about Star Wars. I've literally talked about Star Wars in dozens of videos. Like I said, if you're gonna ask me something about that, you can drop it in the super chat because I'm not going off topic. What he was talking about was relevant because he was talking about whether, he, I mean, it wasn't completely off topic, but what he was referring to Paul Simon from the Simon and Garfunkel group as whether he's a culture vulture and has siphoned off of African or black culture from his music because that's what it goes into the whole thing about someone being a tether. Tethers are immigrants from African and Caribbean countries who kind of siphon off of Black American culture when they need it, like either to take advantage of the economic opportunities that Black Americans can enjoy here, or to run for office, or to get into college and claimed to be of Black ancestry when they're not. So that so that's It was sort of relevant. But guys, I'm gonna go soon because I've all the people I was hoping that was gonna give me the smoke session today aren't here. And usually these will be the same people who will ask me these very same questions in another stream, and I'll be like, well, no, I've actually talked about in a previous stream. This Darius Rucker, is he what? Are you asking, is he a culture vulture, or are you asking, is he a tether? I like Darius Rucker, by the way, but uh, I wouldn't know whether you're asking if he's a culture vulture or if he's a tether. Tether, I don't know. Is he not from a? I don't know his background, but I assumed he was Black American. Is he not? Like, is he from the UK or from the Caribbean or something? I don't know. Aside from that, I've never heard him say anything denigrating about black people. Like I've heard people like Harris and Obama and others say. Eric, what's up, man? He said, hey, just stopping by to say hi. Haven't hopped on YouTube in a while. No problem. I was hoping you were still around. When you get a chance, check out some replays of my lives. I've done, I did, I don't know how long it's been since you've been gone, but I've done a few interviews with one of my followers, Miss Needle, who's now the moderator, and I did a few streams with my wife. So check those out when you get a chance. It's like when you fell off, all the other Erics left too. So, but yeah, back to Free Bill Walton. Yeah, I don't know if Darius Rucker is a tether. Like I said, I don't know his background. Candace Owens, I don't care what she says, she can get it. Well, I don't look at her that way because I'm not really attracted to black women. But um, I mean, she's not ugly. But people have called her tether though. They have said that because her one of her family members is from the Caribbean, so people have called her tether as well. So if that's the case, so be it. Then there's like former General Colin Powell. He's of Jamaican descent, but at least I can say like with Colin Powell, people in the black community respected him. Like I don't remember him saying or doing anything that went against the black community. Eric says awesome, definitely will, man. LOL, I caused an Eric rift. I've been rehabbing. I was in an accident that hurt my neck and back. Sadly, so it's been a journey, but now I have time to catch up. Well, yeah, I hope you're doing better. I didn't, I didn't know that, man. I'm sorry. But yeah, like I've had a few cool interviews since then. Oh, I've had another interview with a local Filipina. She couldn't actually stay on for long because she had a bad internet connection and had to take care of her children. She's one of those all too common Filipinas overseas. They're like single moms and like they don't really work. They just get money through stuff they do on Facebook, which I'll leave to your imagination. And so I gave I interviewed her, but she didn't stay on long enough so that we could really like talk in length. But I was telling her like any super chats that I received on that stream, I would just give to her. So if someone did donate her $5, which I gave to her that day, even though I haven't received it myself um, through YouTube, but I just went ahead and gave it to her. I told her when she come back, we'll do that again, and that I'll like double whatever she gets through super chats here. So I told her I just want her on because it helps me with the algorithm and get more likes and more eyeballs, and in return she get any of the super chats that I get. So and by the way, people can still send her money. Like if someone sends me a super chat and says, "Hey, this is $20, but this is for your guest, Christian May." Her name was Christian May Layson, but people say, "Hey, I remember your guest that you had on named Christian May, and I know she was struggling financially. Hey, here's a few bucks. I will give that to her, and I'll just give it to her from my own money, and just wait till I can get my check through YouTube. I'll give that to her directly. So if anybody wants to send her money, go right on ahead, and I'll send it to her in my own money. Like say, hey, here's $25 for Christian May, or here's $5 for her, here's $2 for her, whatever we want to give her. Even if it's 200, I don't care. I'll give it to her in my own money, because I know I'll get it through YouTube. So eventually, so just letting people know. Um, but yeah, but so what Bill Walton said, yeah. So Candace Walton, I don't agree with everything she says, but some things she says is quite sensible. But yeah, she can come off. I think it would. I think it would be fair to call her a tether as well, because she does represent herself as just a black person and doesn't speak of her Caribbean heritage. And I think anyone who's in a spotlight, if you're of if you're of immigrant status, you should say that. You shouldn't just say I'm black and then say stuff that a lot of people in the black community disagree with, whether you're on the left or the right. If you say a lot of stuff that the black community is against, whether you're on the left or the right, it's always fair to bring up the point that hey, you're not actually a foundational black American. You're actually of Caribbean heritage, or you're of African heritage, or you're of Latino heritage. That's always a fair point to make. So, including with Candace, even though I agree with a lot of her points, except on Israel. I don't rock with her on that stuff that she and Kanye says. um, Free Bill says, have you heard of Ed Powell? He's a police chief from Chicago who in the '80s got in trouble for calling people, asking women to have relations with him, but people started tapping the calls, and he got fired. So I've heard of the name Ed Powell because that probably rings a bell because I used to live in the Chicagoland area back in the '80s, not in Chicago City itself, but like outside of Chicago in University Park or Crete, Illinois. And that name does sound familiar, but I didn't know about what happened with him. Was I'm guessing he was black or black adjacent. Aaron says interesting. Yeah, definitely opens up different avenues for both. Um, so I'm in Chicago. The DNC just ended here. That was quite the chaos. My physical therapy was 5 blocks from the DNC convention area. Oh man, talk about traffic. That I know it was like, cause like every celebrity was pouring in there. Yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to be in the Chicago area doing that whole thing. And they did probably have the biggest celebrities there. I'm not gonna lie, because most celebrities tend to be on the left. So it was pure chaos, riots, fires, shootings. Damn. So I guess a lot of people protesting that, because they, although Chicago's a Democrat city and Illinois is a blue state, being in the Midwest, there's still going to be a sizable portion of people who are on the right in Illinois. Like most of Illinois is rural, and I'm pretty sure most of those folks are more conservative than the people who live in places like Chicago and Joliet, right, and Springfield. You see, he looked like Carl Winslow from Family Matters. Yeah, do you? Eddie. Yo, you know what's true? All right, right, all right. I'm about to go on a tangent just for a second, but it was so. I did not know until like I saw a clip like last week that like at the end of like Family Matters that Eddie Winslow had became a cop too. I didn't know that. Did y'all guys watch Family Matters up until the point that Eddie became a cop? I had yo that was trippy, and that was by the way when they changed the wife, swapped her out for another actress the same way they did on the Fresh Prince of Bel Air. They swapped out the wife for a new actress. Um, Hold on, let me tell my wife that I'm in a strain. Sorry, guys, give me a second. Uh, Eric says, "Did you hear about there was a shooting at a popular restaurant where the DNC conglomerate were eating right outside? They got a first-hand look at current violence in Chicago. Maybe the lights will come on. Don't count on it. Don't freaking count on it. Right now, there's you got the freaking mayor of Baltimore, Brandon, whatever the fuck his name is, t- bragging about how the crime stats have gone down the last few years in Baltimore. Violent crime, property crime, theft, and all that sort of stuff. Meanwhile, quality of life crimes have gone up, but that they're still below 1990s levels, which is like the epitome of crime rates. For the 20th century was the 1990s, and still the epitome of high crime rates for the 21st century now. The problem with that is that although he's been touting how for the last several months, although he's been touting how much the crime rates have gone down, Baltimore has just been designated as the number one homicide city in the country right now. So it's like, yeah, the math isn't mathing here. Like, yes, con- compared to previous years or decades, it's less violent, but that's not saying much when the city has just became the number one city for murder in the country. Still, that's still showing how dangerous it is here. Plus, while all those other crimes have went down, quality of life crimes have gone up, and you can see it when you go into the city. It's dangerous. People's like if you go downtown, I would advise not driving down there because someone might break into your car. I would advise not going there at night because ninjas are out there doing what ninjas do. And yeah, I know Chicago is bad, but like I say, Baltimore is worse because it's a smaller city than Chicago, so it's just over 600 something thousand residents in Baltimore, which means per capita is way more violent than Chicago, because I think Chicago's like like 1.2 million people, something around there, right? Whereas Baltimore's only about 600 something thousand. At its height, Baltimore had about maybe 900,000 people at one time, almost a million. But with the flight out of the city as it became bad in the 70s, it has never gotten back to that time back in like the late 60s, early 70s, where it was at its height of its population. Um, and so it's been steadily decreasing because most people who come into good financial means tend to move away from the city, usually into the DC suburbs, or way out into the greater Baltimore regions, like the really nice places, like where you see Dr. Ben Carson living. But yeah, there's not gonna be a bright light going on until it literally affects like until it actually hurts them. It's not gonna register, Eric. It really won't. Eric said, "Yeah, Aunt Viv on Fresh Prince. I'm still mad about that. LOL. The original one had a spicy personality for the show. I don't know why they changed her because Fresh Prince fired her, Will Smith fired her because they weren't getting along. You know, they talked about that. Dark Star said, I've heard a lot of talk about Donald Glover being what you could describe as a tether. I don't know though. I had to look it up, guys. Is Donald Glover not American? Is he does he have Caribbean or African parents? Because I haven't heard of that. Um, Eric says, yeah, they don't take into account the fact that crime in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, the fad was gang life and the crack epidemic, so those numbers can't be comparable to today. Dumb Democrats use that. Yeah, so now we have an opioid crisis as opposed to a crack crisis. The problem is they're treating it completely differently. The the people of the 80s and 90s who were the victims of, of the crack epidemic were criminalized, whereas now the people from the opioid crisis are seen as are being rightfully seen as victims, but we see the difference is the color of people is the difference why they're treating them with kid gloves as opposed to throwing a book at the victims of the crack epidemic. And this is another reason why I criticize Biden because he actually authored the 1988 crack bill. Most people don't remember this, but crack cocaine became the first federally mandated sentencing for a drug in 1988. And what was weird about it was there was no other controlled substance that was to receive federal uh, a mandated federal sentencing. Only crack, like heroin wasn't, LSD wasn't, PCP wasn't, um, MDMA. None of those other illicit drugs had that. Only crack cocaine, and that was authored by Biden in 1988. That's when he was a senator. Then he came along in 1994 and then did the 1994 crime bill, which locked up tens of thousands of black and Latino men, mostly black though, for like minor crimes. So I want people to remember that when they always talk about, well, Trump is the racist, but Biden wasn't. Trump never did anything like that. American Noise says Waterbury, Connecticut is crazy at night. A lot of places are crazy at night, but I guarantee it's not crazy as Baltimore. Not by far. He said, I saw a guy hotboxing his truck there with windows all rolled up and he couldn't see with all the smoke and crashed into a pole. Wait, he was driving while he was hotboxing? Yeah. That's just stupid. Oh well. It's not like he's trying to earn his Darwin Award for 2024. Those Darwin did one thing about those yearly Darwin Awards. There's no limit to how many they give out. You can get out. There's there's unlimited Darwin Awards for people out there. So if people want to claim their Darwin Award, they're right on welcome to it. So um, you see, yeah, the windows all broke and the smoke all came out. It smelled like like a grow tent. Man, that's crazy. Like at least if, and this is why this is why I be saying to people out here too, because like recreational marijuana is legal in Maryland since last year. Last summer they legalized it with this new governor. And I keep telling people because people I see people driving around smoking weed. I'm like, you guys know that's still a DUI, right? Like you're still driving under the influence. Like it's a substance. like like alcohol is legal, but you still can't drink it while driving. It's like same thing with weed. I said weed is legal now, but you still can't smoke it while driving. You'll still be charged with a DUI. Eric says that's not as bad as the west side and south side of Chicago, also sadly. But I thought the west side of Chicago was the nice part. Am I wrong, or did that change? He said right there's a legal limit for weed. Also, they can't comprehend that because they're not comprehending at all. That's the problem. Like they're just like, oh, it's legal now, man. Like okay, yeah, it's legal, but that doesn't mean you can drive and smoke at the same time because you're still under the influence. It's still I don't see why people don't get that. Like if you want to smoke, cool. Go ahead, park somewhere, enjoy your weed. No, then go drive once you've mellowed out. But don't sit there and drive while you're smoking. I don't even like when honestly I don't even like when people do that when they have cigarettes because it diverts their attention. And you notice that's why a lot of cars don't have aren't built for smokers anymore because you remember in the 80s and 90s they all had that built-in ashtrays with the built-in cigarette lighter. I don't know how many times someone asked me to like give them the cigarette to push in the cigarette lighter so they can warm it up, like so they can use it to either use it for a cigarette or for something else. But you don't see that anymore. You don't see cigarette lighters and cigarette ashtrays in cars because automotive engineers stopped doing that because they realized that it caused attention. It divided people's attention while they were driving, and that was something that doesn't get you high. So imagine something that also gets you high and you're smoking, which is already dividing the attention because your attention is on your weed joint or your blunt, and then on top of that, you're also smoking a mild hallucinogen. That's not a good idea. Mercano says, "Tell that to the Subaru drivers; they won't listen." That's Connecticut Subaru. That kind of sounds like that goes together. Like someone with a big Bernie Sanders sticker. And by the way, I like Bernie Sanders, but still, that sounds like someone with a Bernie Sanders sticker on the back of that Subaru smoking weed, and it'll probably be like a white person with dreadlocks. but yeah, um, Aaron says no. The West Side is the current area of Chicago that's bad. It's always been, but right now it's the hot spot. The good areas are the North Side and the Southwest Side. Oh, okay. I always hear of the South Side as being bad, so I never heard of the Southwest. I just heard like I knew the North was good, but I thought the West Side of Chicago was good as well. Because you think of the I don't know because I think of the movie West Side of Chicago. um, but yeah, I didn't know West was always bad because like I said, I always lived in the suburbs when I lived in Illinois. I lived in Crete, Illinois, and Park Forest, University Park, those areas. And back then, it was right when I moved out that they started pushing those dudes from the inner city of Chicago into the area. Mercanoy says my school bus had ashtrays, but our bus was long overdue replacement. It had to have been built in the early '90s. Yeah, if it still had an ashtray in it, yeah. Like I said, you don't. I have not seen a modern car with an ashtray and cigarette lighter since the early '90s. Eric says, yeah, so the South Side is gentrifying as more Latinos are buying homes, emerging with black folks, and the hipster white kids are buying in also. Okay. I mean, that's not a bad thing, except that I know that all those hood boogers are being pushed out into the county, like into the old area where I used to live, because I have I used to have a best friend who still lives out there. Although I think he moved to Vegas now, but I caught up with him like 8 9 years ago, and he was still living out there. Um, but he was doing well. He was doing really well, and he said, "Man, all those little hood boogers from the south side of Chicago have moved into that area." He said it's now become ghetto. I was like, he was saying it wasn't like how it was when we grew up there. I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, that usually sounds like a byproduct of gentrifying because when you gentrify an area, it doesn't. It, those people have to go somewhere. Some people forget that like these people don't just disappear; they just get relocated to somewhere else to be a problem. You see that in Baltimore right now too. Like Baltimore slowly gentrifying. Baltimore has been harder to gentrify than places for some reason than like New York or DC because these have always been like big international cities with a lot of commerce or um, politics and all that sort of stuff to 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 have people gravitate to those cities that would push those uh, lower class people out into the surrounding suburbs. But that hasn't really been the case with Baltimore because it's been a failed city for so long. I mean, there's no way to get around it. Baltimore has been a failed city since like the 70s. Aaron says, "Yep, you're right about that." Says Chicago has always been fairly segregated, sadly, and the hood boogers are now in the burbs. Yep, like I said, in the area. So the areas, I think it's Will County. So like Crete, like I said, Crete, Illinois. Where I think Michael Jordan used to have a. I think I remember in the '80s there was a rumor amongst us kids saying that he had a mansion or somewhere out there in Crete, Illinois. I don't know whether that was true or not, but Park Forest, Crete, and University Park. I used to live in those areas right near Lincoln Mall, which is a like a dead mall now. All in that area. Um, and yeah, that was like Will County and I forgot the other county. No, Cook County and Will County. Yeah. So I think Crete and University Park were on the Cook County side, and Park Forest was on the Will County side, but like right next to each other. And yeah, they pushed all the hood boogers out into that area, and that's we can get into how problematic the Chicago mayor is too, right? We know that like first there was that woman, she did not do a great job, but the person they got to replace her was not any better. I forgot that dude's name, who's currently in office, but he is no better. And like I said, I've actually argued this in a preview live stream. I think that was my topic a few days ago, where I was saying all these black Democratic leaders and black church leaders are sort of the reasons why these black communities suck nowadays. So that was that was actually one of my live streams. This has been like a continuing theme since earlier last week, where I was like kind of just complaining about why things are so bad, and this is like the final end of it, talking about um, how these little tethers come into office pretending to be black and they really don't do anything for black Americans. And like I said a few days ago, I got into the fact that a lot of these little black Democratic leaders, whether they're tethers or not, have done nothing for these black communities, nor have these church leaders who tend to take the money of these poor people who live in that area and use it to take care of their families, and that money doesn't get recycled back into the community. It usually just ends up being cycled into these majority white suburban neighborhoods. So these poor people are coming to church every day, giving their offerings for their little pie in the sky, and meanwhile they're not getting anything for it in return. At least at at, at best the money would be recycled back into the community, but that doesn't even happen. So it becomes like so these black churches literally become like an economic drain on the ghetto. Aaron says, "Yep, the last three mayors have been terrible." Google. I know about Tiffany Henyard. I did it. Check out my video. I did a whole video talking about Tiffany Henyard, talking about the Dalton mayor. I know about her. Especially, I saw a lot of stuff because the YouTuber O'Shea Duke Jackson, he's literally done like hundreds of videos on her. They need to lock her ass up. He said it's sad what she's done. She stole over $3 million in funds from the town that desperately needed it and used it on herself. Oh, I know. Taking these expensive trips like overseas and stuff like that. And like when asked like, how did you fund that and stuff, like she got, all snippy about like, sh- she's a, yeah, she needs to be locked up. They got FBI investigation on her and all that. They have the, I don't know what they're waiting for. This, I think all it, at this point, I think all the evidence is there. She needs to be locked up. Ghetto ass city girl mayor. That's what they started calling her, the city girl mayor. Erin says she's gone MIA now and the town is in shambles. She used her own people to vote for her and then she turned her back. Wait, she's fled? I didn't know that. So I'm gonna have to start watching some of these videos on her because I've not kept up. I didn't know she fled. I thought that they just haven't put. I thought they just haven't that they hadn't prosecuted her yet. I didn't know she fled. Yeah, my video's not upside down. That's just your balls in my mouth. I mean, my balls in your mouth. So, because you said upside down, get it? Anyway, there's no upside down here. You just need to get off the drugs. I don't know why so many people come onto live streams and talk random shit. I said, yep, she's MIA at the moment. They had a community meeting this week and she was nowhere to be found. Rumors Florida, but they're working to get her back up here. All right, Joe. You're gone. Anywho, um, that reminds me of this mayor in, this is unrelated, but in the Philippines. So there is a there was a mayor in the Philippines in a part of this province called Tarlac. Uh, Tarlac is actually where my wife's um, family's from. Her maternal side of the family's from Tarlac, and in this one city, I think it's Bamban Tarlac. The the mayor was of partial. They thought she was just of partial Chinese descent. No, they couldn't even. They didn't even have actual records to back up who this woman actually was, but she was going by the name Alice Guo. Find out this bitch is a fucking Chinese spy who was who became a Philippines city mayor in Tarlac, and it was also suspicious because a lot of these places that that there has been heavy Chinese investment in the Philippines, they do these things where they set up um, these little financial laundering scams and stuff like that, or they set up stuff next to community like government so that they can obviously use that for intelligence gathering. After she was caught, like they found out that this bitch is a Chinese spy, she's fled. Now they just I saw on the news they recently locked up her sister and they got her real name, which surprise surprise isn't Guo. It's something Jian something something. Like they're freaking spies. They Chinese. How did a Chinese spy get elected as a fucking city mayor in the Philippines? And she's likewise fled. She's still somewhere, I believe in. I think she's still somewhere in the Philippines, but she's fled. Um, even though she was still actively mayor at the time, and has been on, has been online, I think on Facebook or whatever, kind of pleading her case. And they're like, no, you need to turn yourself in. Like, you're a fucking spy. Like, you've committed identity fraud to become a mayor and all this other sort of crazy stuff. How do these people become mayors, Eric? Like, we need to become mayors. Shit. You got a Chinese spy in one country becoming a mayor. You have another bitch in another city in Illinois that's like stealing millions and millions of dollars while sitting there insulting people. She had her own police force had had their their police cars repoed because they can't pay their bills. She's taking kickbacks for anyone who needs something done in the government. It's a whole mess. Like, how do these people become mayors? Like, that's just bananas to me. Eric says, I've heard something similar in other countries. They do the same in small towns in Mexico. People posing as having Mexican background, but they're really from Spain, Germany, Poland, and Russia. That's crazy though. Being an entire fucking spy, and you, like, I can see, like, you, like, when you're a spy, you're supposed to blend in. Like, you're supposed to be like the everyday man. But to run for mayor, to have, meaning you got to have a high profile, and they no one ever did their due diligence to make sure this person is who they said they were before getting elected. That's crazy. Especially in somewhere like the Philippines, where most of the people who run, it tends to be very nepotistic. Like, people tend to just run on their family names over there. Uh, oh Glory says Kamala Harris created the housing crisis in America currently by allowing 20 million illegal immigrants into the country while giving them housing vouchers and free aid. I don't know if it's 20 million, but I know she, as the so-called border czar or whatever she wants to say she was then, because now she doesn't want to claim that title anymore. She she let the government down. She let the nation down. Excuse me. Eric says becoming high political figures and planting their flag and stealing, fleeing and leaving the towns worse off. Yeah, because this is like a small city in Tarlac, so it's not like something anyone would have heard of outside of that part of that part of the country, or even within that province. Like, I don't think people outside of that province have probably heard of that city until they saw it on the news. Excuse me, talking with this Chinese spy. So that was crazy. But I definitely don't know how some of these people get elected to office. And like Tiffany Henry, like I said, she's a whole mess. She just, like, yeah, ratchet. Like, then the thing is, if you're gonna be like committing financial crimes while in office, wouldn't it make sense to have a better like political like face to the public? Like, she came off oppositional, like, she just came off as unlikable and very oppositional to people while she was in office. And it's like, you would think a smooth criminal would rob people with a smile on their face and be very nice. I'm not giving any. Nope. Put it in the super chat, Brody. Nope. Eric says, I grew up in Cicero, Illinois, home of Al Capone. Yeah, I heard. And disgraced former mayor Betty Lauren Maltese. If you get a chance, Google her history. You won't be disappointed with the craziness. Uh-oh. Well, that's one thing I know from like reading the Obama autobiography is that, well, even before him, but mostly after reading stuff that he said, Chicago has a long history of corrupt politics. So that was one of the things he talked about when he ran for office, is that he was worried that it would blemish his future political career being associated with the political corruption of the Chicago politics. So, but at the same time, he said he kind of ingratiated himself to all the people who were really important in the Chicago politics at the time, and said he would, go out and meet with these with just which is why he was never progressive. Like he would go out and hang out with these really old money people within the Chicago politics, like filthy rich. Go out smoking cigars and going to these country clubs and stuff like that. The sort of stuff that you expect politicians to do, right? But it's like on the one hand, you're talking about how corrupt Chicago politics is, but on the other hand, you're saying, well, I did ingratiate myself to a lot of these people, this old money in Chicago politics, which are probably the same people who are the ones being accused of all this corruption. But whatever. Obama's never been very. I don't know. He talks out of two sides of his mouth sometimes. But yeah, I've heard of, like, the only person I don't remember hearing of any scandals was the was the black mayor back in the 80s, Mayor Washington. I don't remember hearing anything bad about him, but I was a kid, so I'm not sure. But I don't remember hearing anything bad about that guy. And then the 80s mayor here in Baltimore, Kurt Schmoke, who's now I think he's still a law professor at University of Baltimore Law, or he's a professor emeritus. So Harold Washington was the best. Yeah, like I said, I don't remember anything bad about Washington, Harold Washington. I remember him being like someone pretty likable. I remember them talking about what's the guy name? Was it Dole? What's the guy? Um, and I think he was the son of the mayor before Harold Washington. He said they don't make them like him anymore. He had charisma but balls. Agreed. Like I said, that's when I that's when Illinois was the best. Like back in the 80s, all the like uh all the John Hughes films were like I think filmed in Illinois back then. Like 80s was the best. Like living in Illinois at the time. But yeah, guys, I think I'm about to call it. It's getting late. Um, so yeah, I'm about to call it. But if anyone had any other like comments about like tethers and stuff like that, like I said, I had some of the people mentioned. I'm not sure are tethers. Someone mentioned Darius Rucker from Hootie and the Blowfish. I'm not sure about him. Then someone else mentioned Donald Glover. I've never heard of either of those two having like Caribbean heritage or African heritage. Candace Owen, yes, I have. I know that one of her parents is of Caribbean heritage. Eric says I'll catch you on the next live stream. Yeah, you hopping on tomorrow? Yep. I'll probably hop on around this around like 6 to 7, something like that. Unless I'm at the gym, then it might be 8 or 9. But it'll be around that time. And I hope you're feeling better though. Excuse me. All right, bro. All right, guys. So check me out later. You can watch this in its entirety on the replay. And if you don't mind, give me a like and a subscribe. Hit the share button. Share with your friends. You can hit the bell for notification on upcoming videos. I always take a super thanks if you'd like to do that, or you can drop me a Cash App or Venmo or buy me a coffee, so I'm not just drinking coffee with electrolytes. No, I wanted this, but you could do that. And like I said, I'll still take donations for Christian May for people who saw that live stream 2 weeks ago. I told her if anyone still wants to donate money to her on her behalf, I'll take it and I'll give her the money out my personal cash because it takes a while before I get the money from YouTube. So whatever I get from for her, I'll just release to her immediately, whatever that amount is. So if you guys want to do that, go ahead, um, and I'll let her know um, if I get sent anything. But I appreciate it, guys. I will be back on here tomorrow evening Eastern Standard Time. So same bat time, same bat channel. Talk to you guys later. Thank you.